You are listening to the Better 2 podcast with DM Needom. Hi, gang. Donna here. Thanks for tuning into the Better 2 podcast. Today's guest is Susan Robertson. She starts off her journey when she was a child. Her childhood at times was not the most idyllic. There were days where there was no heat in the house on a cold winter's night. I mean, take yourself and put yourself in that position where you're a kid and you don't have any heat. You don't have any light. Everything's done by candlelight. It's cold. And this is going to make an impression on you. This is going to form who you are, because it's going to give you the drive and motivate you to say, I never want to live like this again as an adult. And she doesn't. She has a pretty amazing story of how she created 2 businesses, how she became a stepmom of 4 kids, and how raising them gave her a different avenue and appreciation for things. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. It was really interesting to talk to her. This episode of the Better 2 podcast is brought to you by Kitty Mystic and DM Needom, author of My Days with the Dark Muse, as well as Love is Worth Waiting For. Hi, Susan. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Where are you located at currently?
I live just outside of Charlottesville, Virginia,
Okay.
in a little town called Crozet.
So it's not super cold and it's not super wintry.
Not yet, no. And I'm looking out my window. I have a view of the Blue Ridge Mountains and lots of golds and reds. And
Nice.
So it'll be 55 today and 30s at night. It's perfect.
And we were 50 yesterday and then we were 17 last night.
Oh, that's a little cool. Yeah.
But welcome to Chicago. You know, one day it'll be during the day it's 80 and at night it'll suddenly drop. So that is our life. So you are coming on the podcast because you decided that you wanted to take a huge risk with your life when it came to your financial independence. And why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, well, my background, I have to say a little bit about childhood, as I grew up extremely poor, particularly during my teenage years, where we were on welfare. There were times we lived without gas or electricity and water in the dead of winter in Cleveland. And and there were, some times where only candlelight and that kind of thing. And I remember making a decision to myself, with myself, saying, I will never let this happen to me when I'm in control of my life, because it was very dark, very painful for that. And so my original vocation that I thought I wanted to do based on my background was to become a social worker. And then when I saw how much they made, I was like, no, done poor already. Don't want to spend a lifetime doing that, but I still wanted to help people.
Well, I'm sorry. And the thing about that is, while you're helping all these other people, there's also a certain amount of stress you're going through, because I have a feeling that you most likely are a type of person who takes on other people's problems.
Sometimes I've learned not to, but that took I had to learn lots of learnings. And so, I went and got a degree in finance and marketing and, was working at a bank when at 26 years old, I realized that was not the life for me. It didn't matter how financially secure I was. And so my husband and I started a company, a consulting firm company, and I married a man with 4 children. So that was my first leap off of what I would say was, banking, financial security, steady paycheck, ticking all the boxes that I wanted to have ticked from my childhood. And then starting over and having to go through the stresses of making sure we provided for those children, and yet still did what I would call the American dream, start our own business. And then 5 years ago, company doing absolutely fine. There was something else I wanted to get into. So I jumped again and started all over again. And, we're in my 3rd year of business with a new company, similar similar type of business, but very different products and services. And so having to start all over in a very different era during COVID has been, so it brought up a lot of the same fears that I had when I was 27, that I had when I was 15. And yet, of course, fortunately, not as much. I knew I would never go that far back, but still, you never want, at least me, I never want to tap my savings for anything, you know.
Well, and I was going to say, you know, the fact that you're willing to become a step parent, that's a lot of responsibility. And I had somebody, because I was a step parent myself, I had somebody comment on a post on a short I made. It was an outtake of a video, and I mentioned something about being a step parent. And this person commented that with adoption, a child always knows that they want to be adopted. And with a step parent, you're actually in the relationship for the other person, not for the kids. So the kids aren't wanted. I'm thinking, no, because I actually have interviewed people that have been adopted, and they're like, I had real bad issues of abandonment because I was adopted. And I'm sure, like myself, you kind of, when you decided, hey, I'm going to be the step parent, especially to 4 kids, ultimately, you know that you're going to have an effect on their life.
Yeah.
And it's not just something casual.
No, and you accept the whole package.
Yeah.
And knowing that you're in the role of a parent, but you're not the actual parent. And then how do you work with that when, you know, there's very much of a love relationship with both parents? And then, yeah, you're kind of coming in, and, you know, of course, that was 30 some years ago. Now they're all grown people. And, but yeah, it was, you know, learning how to be a step parent was, and to find that love relationship with them too, because ultimately I never had children of my own. So they were it, you know,
Right.
for me. And they still are it for me, even though they're big people now.
And that's the thing. I think the way movies have portrayed step parents for so long in the media, it's like you're supposed to be the wicked, nasty person.
Yeah.
Or the
You know,
go ahead.
it was funny you bring that up, because I remember it was Dee Dee, I believe. She's one of the twin girls, and she must have been 5 or 6 years old. And I heard her behind me, somebody asking, well, who's she? That's Sue. Well, who is she? That's my stepmom. Oh, is she like Cinderella's stepmom?
Oh,
I heard Dee Dee. And of course, now my ears are perked up. I heard Dee Dee go, no, she's not like that. She's really nice. She's not like Cinderella's stepmom. I'm like, oh, thank God. Otherwise, I would have gotten some feedback, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, my situation was kind of different because the girl's mom was out of the picture. So I ended up playing surrogate mom, and I ended up going to school one day with the kids. And somehow it's like, because I did everything. My husband was on the road, so I did everything. And I remember one of the teachers looking at me going, you're actually not related biologically. I'm like, no. She goes, I would have never known. The way you look, the way you guys all, I'm like, yeah. So for me, because I ended up walking away, it was a very hard thing, because these were my, you know, they were my kids, just like you're saying. And for people to sit there and say, well, step parents, they don't love those kids. It's BS.
Yes, they do.
Mm-hmm.
And now I've got 8 grandkids. So
wow.
Is nice, you know, because it's really, and we have a great relationship with the children's biological mother. You know, we've spent all holidays together from the time they were young. And, you know, so we tried to make that family work, or as Drew would say, he has 3 parental units that he grew up with. And, you know, and there's always going to be that special biological connection that you will never have as a step parent. But that doesn't mean that that relationship is any less important or valid or loving, you know.
And I commend you guys, because of the fact that if you were willing to spend holidays together as a family unit, even with the exes, I mean, I'm a child of divorce, and to get my parents to be at my graduation, my high school graduation, was just an amazing thing. And my dad didn't stay to go to dinner with us. It was like, all right, I came, bye. It was never, we were never having the family participation of trying to make it work. If I even, you know, we're all adults now. If I even mentioned my dad, I remember visiting my dad and I said something about my mother, and he just went off. And my husband had never seen the side of me. He's like, you reverted back to a kid.
Oh, wow.
He's like, I watched you just change into this kid again. I was like, I don't know why I did it, but it was just, he got nasty about it. And it was just all those things that just came back to life. That was like, wow, okay. But I don't think we really realize that we can fall into those roles.
Yeah, we can.
Easily. And something you were touching on, I mean, I never, my living situation, we never were without lights or anything like that. But, well, I shouldn't say that. I remember my grandmother, my mom, scraping the money together because the lights had been shut off and going to the power company to pay the bill that day. And hopefully it would get turned back on that night.
Right. Yeah.
So I know that stress, and that's one thing, going back to the step parent thing, it's like, I never wanted to have my kids go through what I went through.
Exactly. Same. When I married my husband, I'm like, we will never miss a payment. If we have to go without and eat only peanut butter and jelly, we will not miss a payment, because we need to keep them secure. We need to keep them safe. Even though we're off starting a business, we were both in banking, they shouldn't suffer for our decision. And it was a big decision that we both took to make sure that financially they didn't suffer. Did they have everything in the world? No. But, we never missed a payment. And as far as I know, we were never late either.
Well, and that kind of goes along with what's coming up, which is the holiday season. You have people that want to make their kids happy by giving them the thing that they want, and they'll put themselves in hock to do that, when really the biggest thing that most kids want, without really knowing it, is to be loved.
It's to be loved. It's to be together. It's to feel safe. And that was one of the things that, as our children have grown up, and some of them have been married and divorced, they have said to us, we want to model ourselves after you and Dad, because it doesn't have to be this, the stressful relationship, because it's better for the children if it's not. And then, what did the three of us fight about? The same things every parent group fights about: discipline and how you're spending money. So we had that. So then the three of us had to learn to work that out. And then there were times where it was clearly inappropriate for me not to be part of that conversation, that it needed to be between, my husband and Linda. And so, it was just, it's really nice. And now that they're ranging from 37 to 41, I can now see some of the impact. There was like, oh, they really did listen to me. Oh, I really did have an impact.
You were saying about, the conversation, and that's the thing about it. For me, I didn't have to worry about that. I had the luxury of not having to. At a certain point, I hate to say it, I became the disciplinarian. I became the one that was the caregiver, sole caregiver. And near the end of my marriage, it was kind of like, I'm married, but I'm a single mom.
Wow.
And how does that work? I mean, at a certain point, it was very surreal for me, because it's like, how do you walk away when you know that you are the sole caregiver?
Oh, yeah. I can't imagine what that would have been like for you.
But when you're not in a happy marriage either, it's the sad thing is, in a normal situation, if you walk away from a marriage, the kids you have equal access to. Right. And this, you have no rights. And that's the one thing that's another thing they don't think about. It's like, when a step parent is completely cut out of the kid's life, what are you doing to that child as well?
Yeah, exactly. Because they formed a relationship with you. So it's a divorce for them too. And then there's another rejection that they're possibly dealing with.
I remember when the youngest one, she was 14, and her father just was like, you're not going to talk to her. I'm like, okay. And I was really upset by it. Bothered me for a long time. And I packed up family pictures that I had, and I mailed them to them, because it's like, they need to see this part of their life. They're with their mom now. They need to see this part of their life. So I sent it, and then I got some letters from my youngest one. And, you know, it was amazing the letters that she was writing to me, but the one broke my heart was she basically told me that she would sit in the rocking chair at her grandmother's house and wait for me to come.
Oh,
And that about gutted me. And it still sticks with me today because I always said I'd never wanted to get a divorce because I never wanted to put a child through that. So once again, that running theme of I don't want to put a child through that.
yeah.
So I know a lot what you're talking about when you don't want to put that your children, biological step, whatever, through what you went through. You learned those lessons for a reason.
Exact. Psychologically, emotionally, financially, you're the caretaker. You're supposed to take care of them no matter what.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if I could go back in time, I don't know. I mean, sometimes I think because that kind of formed my whole relationship. It's like, I'm not going to have kids after this. I'm not going to, I wish I did partially, but the other side is it just, I think it wounded me so bad. It's like, I don't want to go through that again.
Got it. Yeah.
So, but I mean, for you, you thrived. You had a partner. Your relationship was solid, and you have somebody that, when you decided, hey, I want to go into do a different business. How did the husband react?
Well, he was, because I told him, I said, this is going to take an investment of ours, which surprised me that was coming out of my mouth, being the one that would hoard things, because it meant we were going to be developing a software system to measure leadership behavior and culture, which we didn't have before. And we were going to do it outside of the bounds of our current company. And but I felt so strongly that this was the right thing to do. And it was almost like if I didn't do it, I would regret it. And so I asked Barry, I said, this is how much we're going to have to invest. We're not betting the farm, but it's going to feel like we're betting the farm. And, and he was just like, let's go. We made it work once before. We'll make it work again. And we already know how to create a successful business. Not in this time frame, because it's very different than starting a business in 1990.
Yeah.
And social media really didn't exist, and the use of Facebook, LinkedIn, and getting your branding out, and how much more personal you need to be, and all of that stuff. And so yeah, he just said, let's go. So we both retired. He retired first, and I retired a year later from my old company. And that's still in business. We're still owners. And then we went into this new business, and it's not been easy. But yet I find that it's been one of the most creative times of my life. And so there's still like emotional ups and downs. Like, am I going to get the sale? Are we going to be okay? And in the long run, I know we are, but it's the up and down bumps in the road financially that occurs with any business. And, I know the numbers, generally in year 3, you're either going to make it or you're going to break it. And only 75%, I think, of the businesses make it to 5 years, or not 75%, only 25% of all businesses make it to the 5th year. And so I'm really aware of that, and being financially conscious, and how we manage our budget and how we work has been one piece of it. Of course, the other piece of it is that you got to get out there and sell. You can't manage a business by reducing expenses, because you'll reduce your expenses out of business, yourself out of business, if you don't have the income coming in. And so branding, marketing, all of that stuff. And so it's been frustrating and creative at the same time, because creating a brand is so much different now.
Yeah.
But it's fun, because like, how do you create a Facebook group? I can't figure out how to connect my Instagram business to my Facebook, to my Hootsuite, to my, where's a 20-year-old who knows all this stuff? And then before, I was never a brand. It was my company. And now you have to be the brand because people want to know you. And that's really different too. So there's been a lot. I'm glad I did this because it really got me out of my comfort zone in terms of what it takes, because financial stability is still the same. Don't get me wrong. If I wanted to, I could retire, but I don't want to. But nor do I want to go into my retirement too early.
Right.
In terms of the savings, I got places to go, like when we're able to start traveling the world again, I want to go. That's what I want to tap my retirement for. So in between, money is just a measure. It's not the evidence of your success, but it does provide some value of what you can have monetary, mental, emotional, spiritual rewards. So it's one of those. It's not 100% that. So I'm not here to make a ton of money, but I am here because I want to make a difference. And so as a result of making a difference, I'll make a profit, is how I look at it. And in the meantime, my sister's now working with me. That's a lot of fun. We have some really young folks working with us that bring a lot of energy and new ideas to our group. And when I look at that, and then I look at, okay, so I'm the caregiver, I'm the breadwinner going out and getting the sales and that financial stability. But then I also look at it as like, I want to pass the baton to these young people who are in my organization so that they can, be self-efficient, self-motivated, self-inspired to create what it is they want to create for their lives. And, and financial stability is certainly one piece. And, and I look at them thinking that's where I was, in my 20s. Yeah. And I can look back being almost 60 going, I feel like financially I made a lot of right decisions that allowed me to take yet another jump. I could have stayed exactly where I was. It was very comfortable. Didn't have to think hardly at all about what I was doing. But the creativity that comes with starting a new business, along with the fear. It's like skiing. You get up there and like, yay, I can't wait to ski. Oh my God. Because I'm not that good. Yay. Oh my God. Yay. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Fear and excitement is a thin line.
There is. And I think that we get lost on that because it's like and fear is a double-edged sword because there's the fear of success, but there's also that fear of failure.
Right.
And so you're walking, once again, it's that fine line of, so what happens if I fail? What happens if I succeed? They both have something attached to it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's important to have a good inner life of, it's not just the finances, it's what does success really mean to you? And, and me, I deal with a lot of leaders. It is, the financial, it's the emotional, it's the sense of personal fulfillment. It's your family life. It's, your spiritual or your faith, all of those things are what make up a person. And having all of it is really, to me, that definition of success. And money is just one evidence of it.
Well, and I think that we have to change the definition of success a little bit because we got to a point in this country where everybody needed a college degree. Everybody needed their MBA. Everybody needed this. And the fact of the matter is, are you losing something? And is it wrong to look down on somebody who's going to come fix your air conditioner or your heater?
No, I like,
No, but you know what I'm getting at. You know what I'm getting at. You know what I'm getting at, though. It's like, yeah. Oh, you're going to trade school? Well, you know what? If they can make a decent living, they're happy and they like doing what they're doing. That's success.
Well, I can share with you two stories. So both girls, they're twins. They became nurses like their mother. Okay. And both boys ended up becoming entrepreneurs like Barry and me. And I look at the oldest, Bert. He'd rather not like school in high school, and getting him to like go was difficult. And, he's got 2 girls now, but we're in business with him, and he is, I think he's going to probably graduate finally, and he's almost 41 from college. But he's in a business right now on internet security, which he never would have gotten in college, I don't think. And the company's called Ethopass, and he's now pitching to large banks and hospital systems and all of this stuff because of the necessity to keep records safe. Yeah. And I can sort of explain what the business is, but I mean, it's above my pay grade. And I look at him and think, would college have ruined his thinking? Because for him, the sky's the limit. He's got 5 more huge ideas. And he said, I hope it doesn't happen. He said, but the average millionaire fails, at least goes bankrupt at least 3 times. He said, so I haven't been there yet, so maybe I need to fail. And I'm like, you don't have to do that. But if you can but this thing is like almost ready to take off. And then he's got 2 more behind it, 3 more behind it that are equally disruptive, almost like unicorn kind of ideas that I look at him and I think, I wish I didn't have the fears that I see that he doesn't have. He does have them. He does worry. He's raising 2 girls, he's married, he's got a mortgage, he's got all of that stuff. Then the other one, Drew, his friend, ended up committing suicide after being in Fallujah. And he was sort of lost for a while, didn't know what he wants to do. And now he created a nonprofit called Mattersville. And what they do is he gets tiny homes. He's had land donated. They have tiny homes for vets, PTSD vets to come through. And then they also they save wolves. So the wolves help the vets and the vets help wolves. And they've been creating these sustainable communities. And so you look at Drew, who's running a nonprofit, scraping for every penny, right? And, but the fulfillment that he's getting in terms of making a difference, and he's an animal lover. So just being with the wolves, and you'll see, if you saw his TikTok, I'm the alpha. But knowing that vets are able to go there and, what do you need when you have PTSD? You need love, you need acceptance. Yeah. You also need that psychological help as well. Well, these wolves, they've been rescued too. And so it creates a nice community. And so for Drew, yes, he would like to make more money, but it's not all about that either. He has financial freedom, if you will, doing what he does. And Bert's the same thing. And yet he's this big ideas. We're going to get rid of passwords for everybody, internet security on a, distributed network. And that's about all I know about that. On not chain link. Yeah. See, it shows you how much I really know. Blockchain. Platform. And so I look at all of that and I think both of them, well, all 4 of them had to face their fear in a certain way. And even Dee Dee now, one of the nurses, she decided, before even COVID happened, but she decided, I want to work at home. So she went back to school, got a programming degree. And now because she's a nurse and there's a thing called Epic, she's now doing programming at home. Nice. And her nursing background helps because it's all about the coding of,
right,
stuff like that. And I look at them and I'm thinking, wow, 3 of them ended up being entrepreneurs, if you will, and willing to take financial risk. And that wasn't something we sat down with them and said, so when you start a business, these are the things you need to do. Make sure you have 5 months worth of blah, 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 blah. Somehow we passed on, if you want it, go for it. Yeah. And don't worry about skinning your knees, because you will skin your knees. And, I look at that and I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool.
It's pretty powerful. I mean, most I would say most people, they get caught in the fear and they don't move forward. But I think COVID, as bad as it's been, I think in a way it's been a gift, because a lot of people are taking their power back and saying, you know what? I'm not just a hamster on a wheel.
Right.
I'm
Exactly.
not just going to go to corporate America. And, you, I'm sure, understand this as well. When working for corporate America a long time ago, you got benefits. They paid for your health care. They paid for this. You had this bonus. You had that. And then that's all been waysided, and your deductible now on your insurance is insane. And so what are you doing? You're going there stressing yourself out, because we have cell phones. They can reach you at any time they want.
Yeah.
So when do you take a break? And some jobs are so stressful that even when you leave the job, meaning the office, for the day, you're still working the job, even in your dreams.
Yes.
Or should I say nightmares? Because
depends on the job.
yeah. But I mean, I think that we have seen that change, and I think it's going to continue to change.
I think so too. I hope so, because most of my clients are in corporate America. And, when I've watched, in fact, I was working with a team last week, and, the level of burnout that these people have. And then, in this particular organization, the powers that be suddenly decided that you've got to make all your numbers. And they, just 3 months ago, they were forcing everybody back out to travel. But now, because the numbers look a certain way, now you can't travel. And it's like, I look at that and I think, God love you guys for, I'm here to help you with your leadership, with your teamwork, with your culture. But I am so glad. I'd rather have the fear of the ups and downs of the financial, but I look at it as the security of the freedom of my time.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people wouldn't consider that to be security. And I too, even though it was my company, I almost didn't leave my own company for that very reason of healthcare.
Okay.
And then one of the days I just woke up, I'm like, duh, Sue, there's the Affordable Care Act. You can get, if you want, I'm really quite healthy, you can get a high deductible plan. You can get health care. You just buy it the way you buy auto insurance. And when I finally got over that fear, then it was very clear it was time for me to pass the baton in my own company to to my business partners in the next generation, and for me to go off, because I was actually able to find the kind of healthcare that suits me for $550 a month. I was paying more under my own company.
Yeah.
For my portion of the insurance. And like, it's a high deductible. It's for emergencies only, but I've always practiced complementary medicine. I'm healthy. So I've just, knock on wood, trusted that I'll continue that. And if I really need it, I have a maximum ceiling of how much out of pocket I have. I put that aside, and then the rest is covered. So I'm like, okay, you can leave. And you can still put away for retirement, all this stuff.
That's a gift when you have that power to be able to leave. I mean, there's a lot of people that they can't. And,
yeah,
it amazes me, because now McDonald's is $16 an hour.
I know. And I just heard Chipotle is $18 an hour plus health benefits. I'm like, wow.
And that's
$7,000 a year.
That's incredible, because, but here's the thing. Are they going to work you full time, or are they only going to give you 20 hours a week?
Yeah. Who knows? That was my second question when I heard that. I'm like, is that full time, or are you only getting 20 hours, to keep you underneath?
Because then if you only get 20 hours, then you have to pick up a second job to try to get, and then you have to coordinate all that with and it's all stress.
It's all stress.
The one thing, I mean, you and I are not too far in age difference. And, I posted something on the internet, and my uncle's like, he's in his 70s. He's like, it was about gardening, about they should teach gardening in schools. And
I agree with that.
this is what he says to me though. That's the parent's job. And I said, parents don't have that time now.
Mm-mm.
They don't. I mean, before, even though we may have had really some dark spots, there was still time that we spent with our family, good, bad, and different. There was still, they didn't necessarily have all these things going on. Now, besides kids competing for your time, there's also competing with your cell phone.
Yes.
Or the kids getting, I mean, I've seen toddlers, here you go, in the grocery store. Here's a cell phone. Go for it.
Oh, yeah.
And
No,
go ahead.
I agree with gardening. I mean, living out where I live, I have a huge garden, like huge.
Mm-hmm.
And, my next door neighbor does it with me. And so from the time her kids were in kindergarten, she was running a gardening program at the school. And every grade as they went through, then that was the grade that was helping with the gardens. And she was actually getting, 6-year-olds to eat kale soup.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, oh, that's impressive.
Yeah. I'll eat kale in a salad, but I don't know about kale soup, but
By the way she makes it, it's really good.
Okay. Yeah. So you also wrote 2 books.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So the first one is called Real Leadership, Waken to Wisdom. And it's based on the idea that some of the best leaders that I ever met really knew how to balance the human side with the productivity side or the business side. And that when they did that, people, in some ways would almost kill for them because they were being treated with respect. But they also, the best leaders that I met were what I would say were human. They were reachable. They were touchable. And so I was trying to outline what really made the difference between what I would say was a good leader and somebody that people would like just fall over and die for, if you will. Not cult-like, but just they were that good in the way that they did things. And that's what my second company is about, is that once I had that idea of what that distinction is, then can you measure it, and then can you teach others to repeat it? So that's where the software came in. And then the second book, which will actually be due out in February, is called Real Culture, Four Steps to Build Your Competitive Advantage, because it's actually leaders that impact culture inside of an organization. The way a leader is, the way they communicate, the way they address, how much they empower, how much they control, will ultimately determine the performance of a group. Now, people will comply if they're fear-driven, but you never get the best of people in a culture like that. And when you have a culture where people feel inspired and they can be creative, and there's always house rules of whatever organization you work with. Those that know how to really lead and help people understand the house rules and not feel victimized by the house rules. There's always going to be house rules. They tend to be highly successful and they stand out. And I would say in the 30-some years that I've been doing this work, I can name 10 people that I feel like sort of really fit this profile. There's others who get close, but again, with this team the other day, there was a decision that was made, and it was just like, it was so fear-based, and it was coming from above this particular group. And this was a C-suite group, and it was, they have regions throughout the globe. And so the next level region, it was just like, that is nothing but fear, and how often fear causes companies to become contracted. And so then they espouse, we need resilience, we need agility, we need engagement and inspiration. Well, because you get people who become so afraid of taking risks, then they go by way of Kodak. Yeah. or it took me a while to remember. I was like, oh yeah, the BlackBerry.
Oh,
They
yeah.
didn't, right?
Yeah. The Palm Pilot.
The Palm Pilot. Look at Blockbuster. They didn't think Netflix was something to contend with, but we get afraid and we hold on and we don't take risks and we stay in that mold. And I think in some ways that sort of drove me to start another company. Did I get too comfort zoned?
Mm-hmm.
Was there something else where I needed to stretch my wings? And but I see it repeat over and over. And there's two companies that I'm working right now. And I mean, these are large global companies. I think if they don't change, I wouldn't be surprised if in 10 or 20 years, they might become the next Blockbuster.
Well, look at Sears.
Sears.
Penny. Yeah. These were companies that were rock solid. And I go back to, I worked in insurance, and before 9/11, insurance was a golden place to work. It was a place where job security was there. And it was the liability product in. And after 9/11, that changed. Things became very dicey in the insurance world, and big companies failed. And you did not know in fact, the last company I worked for ended up ultimately failing because they expanded so quickly.
Yeah.
And you had a home office based in Pennsylvania, but the president of the company was in Chicago. Mm. But because we're based in Pennsylvania, we can pay you Pennsylvania wages and not what's in Chicago. But then it wasn't only that, they started taking very high risk books of business. And it was just like, what are you doing? But that being said, since you're talking about leadership books, I tried to be a fair boss. I was a claim supervisor, a unit supervisor. And my big boss one day gives me this book, and I've never read it. So if I'm wrong, but I kind of took offense to it because I like being the nice girl. And he gave me this book that says nice girls don't get the corner office. And I'm just like, and my husband's like, well, you can have the corner office. I'm like, I don't want the corner office. I don't want the stress that comes with the corner office.
Right.
And I took offense because it's like, why do I want to be a shark when I'm happy with who I am? Exactly. Which I know a lot of people love that book, and I've never read it. I still own it. But I kind of, he in fact prefaced the whole thing with, I saw this, I bought it for you. I don't know if I should give it to you. Well, if that was already your thought process, maybe you shouldn't have.
Well, and if you look at now what's being espoused in order to keep younger generation, right? Mm-hmm. Compassion, values, meaning, purpose, respect. These things were always, talked about before, but no, the younger generation leaves if there's no meaning or value or purpose, if they don't have a voice at the table. And this is stuff that we should have been doing a long time ago. But now it's really, they've been able to, unlike when we were younger, they're able to actually put dollars around this. So.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't have the voice. I mean, say what you want about social media, and I have knocked it a little bit because it can be toxic, but it can also create something overnight.
Exactly. So,
I mean, how many yoga pants have been sold on TikTok?
Well, exactly. It's yoga pants, but even shopping for clothes, right? I mean, this is undermining all of the retail outlets. Is that I can get 5 outfits sent to me, pick the ones I like, send the rest back. It's at my convenience, or I just rent them for a month and I send them all back and they get recycled. And then I get a whole new set of clothes, and I'm spending about the same amount of money anyway of new clothes I would have bought and then given to Goodwill. So why not just never really own my own wardrobe? Well, that's really turned retail upside down.
Oh, yeah. Well, and then recently Torrid had gotten big brouhaha because there's a TikTok reviewer that reviews plus size fashion, and she took Torrid to task, and Torrid lashed out at her. Ooh. What turned around was people lashed back out at Torrid. And the one thing I have to say, I mean, I do like Torrid. It's a little bit edgier than Lane Bryant. And the fact of the matter is, when I was on hold one time, they're talking on their little answering, their little message, recorded message. This is for the young, hip women. And I'm like, you're missing a whole demographic.
Yeah.
Not be, and that's the thing, I think, because you look at a plus size woman, it's like, oh, well, they're going to look like their mom or grandma. They don't want to look hip.
No, they do. Yeah. And now it's so nice to see, Lululemon, Athleta, all of that. They have all the sizes of people because that's what reality is. And it's just, to me, that just looks much more normal, but I'm still going to order it online versus going to the store.
Well, and like Paulina Poroskova, she's, she's finally, and some other models as well are coming out saying, look, I'm over 50. You don't like it. I don't have all the, I'm going to be who I'm going to be.
Right.
Accept me. And I think that's been a big generational push that has needed to happen. I talked to a British film writer, and she's opening her own production company. And her whole thing is making productions that have older women. So we're not constantly dealing with I don't want to say there's anything wrong with the younger generation, but how many movies do you actually see the older man with the woman that is his age?
Very few.
So are we not setting up, men to have this idea that when I hit a certain age, I better trade in my wife and get the younger model? I mean,
of course, there's the opposite happening now too, where older women
true
for a younger model as well.
I mean, really, when you think about it, kind of all the rules that we learned are going out the door.
They are. And, and I guess I really like the disruption that's occurring. One of the things that my stepson, Bert, and I talked about is like when you were hearing in New York that they're going to call everyone back to work. Well, some people actually moved out of New York and went to North Carolina or Florida. They got out of the very expensive. And I was saying that, it was a Goldman Sachs guy, I think. He said, well, if you're not going to come back in, we're going to adjust your pay. And so Bert and I were talking about it, and I said, well, that makes sense to me. And he said, why? They're still doing the same job. What does it matter about where they live? So then I found myself sounding old, right? Well, their pay was adjusted for the location that they were working in. They up-leveled it. And so they're not living there anymore. And he said, well, it doesn't matter anymore. If you can work from anywhere, then you pay for the job or the role, not based on the location. And I thought, oh my God, if he's thinking that way at 41, then others are thinking that way. So I can sometimes really think pie in the sky. So then what happens to major cities then where pay has gone up based on, cost of living in, let's say, New York City or Chicago or San Francisco. But if I can work from anywhere, then that levels a playing field in terms of payroll in a way that we haven't thought about before. Well, ooh.
It's kind of the reverse of what I was talking about, because like I said, our home office is based in Pennsylvania. So we're not going to pay you what you should be making in Chicago.
Right.
And I interviewed somebody that her and her husband sold everything they own except for a small storage shed, and they live in an RV, and they're driving around the country and they're working via satellite.
Yep.
I mean, I think that the constraints of being in an office and 9 to 5 and let me get to the office, let me go through the traffic, I think that's coming to an end. And I know that I was reading on LinkedIn that some corporate facilities are selling their facilities, their organizational buildings, and turning them into apartments and stuff. Some of them are being turned into apartments.
Yeah.
That being said, where I live, we have, and it actually made Politico, we have the old Motorola plant here that was bought back it was built in the 1990s, closed in 2002, bought by somebody who ended up being one of the oligarchs who ended up getting in trouble with child trafficking, a Russian oligarch. And then it was sold to a Chinese businessman, I believe, who is in jail in Canada for fraud security. And now it has recently been sold again. But during all of this, we had this huge campus. I mean, it had daycare, stadium, auditorium. Now the power's been off for years, the water's been off for years. And this was something huge for the tax base in this town.
Yeah.
And our town actually has a sign that says where success comes naturally. And the first time we drove through, and my husband saw it, it's like, where success comes to die. I'm like, that, but I mean, I can't disagree, because now they're like, okay, we sold the building again. And everybody in town's like, yeah, let's see what happens now.
Who's the owner this time?
Oh, it's an investment, a group of investors, which, what does this mean? Who knows? But that's the thing about it, you know, all this real estate that we have that's going to now either have to change. I mean, because you can't just sell a building and say, okay, we're going to turn it into apartments, because then you have the whole zoning issue. Then you have the whole tax structure issue. And it's going to change a lot of things, a lot of movable pieces. And then the other thing is, now you have cryptocurrency, which is which I find funny, because we already have banks in this town. We have 9,000 people in this town. They just built a brand new bank. And I'm thinking, of all the things to build with cryptocurrency on the rise, why are you doing this?
How many people actually go into a bank anymore? I don't.
No, they built a brand new bank. And we have 4 or 5 banks in town already. And I don't see them busy. I don't understand why you would do this. My friend came to town for the first time in about 4 years, and she's like, okay, so you have a Burger King, you have a McDonald's, you have a Subway, and you have a Culver's, and there's only 9,000 people in your town? And I'm like, yeah, but we're on a main drag, that's why.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have a grocery store, we have Walmart.
Okay.
So, you know, you live in a small town too. So, I mean, it's like, when do, you know, and that's another question, when does Walmart go bust? Because I don't think Walmart can sustain where they're at.
Well, if you look at their business model, who are they now going after? They're going after Amazon.
True.
So they have a storefront, which Amazon didn't have. And now Amazon is buying up the
Whole Foods.
Well, they bought up Whole Foods, but they are now buying up the empty shopping malls.
Oh.
That went, yeah. And so they're turning that not necessarily into storefronts, but distribution centers where they've already got all the space, they've got all the parking, which then makes it easier for logistics, right? To get product to people where Walmart already had that, right? They're in every hometown, if you will. And Walmart needed to then compete on deliver it to me at home. Yeah. And now Amazon has to do the same. And so they've been buying up old shopping malls that are abandoned and then turning them into their warehousing, their distribution. And, you know, so then you talk about automation and people getting out of jobs, the more and more they are able to perfect these drone things or driverless cars. You know, this is where I think financially speaking, when you talk about personal finances, I think you have to be aware of the kinds of trends that are coming to fruition. You know, we talked about, a lot of jobs were lost in the auto industry, and they thought it was to Mexico. It wasn't. It was lost to, if you actually really look at what happened, it was lost to automation. It was lost to robotics. You know, now we have analytics, right? The AI. And before you would have somebody with a brain that would say, strategically, we need to be XYZ, and then your planning group. Well, now I've got my data analytics that says, here are the trends and here's what's going on and here are, you know, in the business world, and here are the gaps. Well, then you sort of start to automate strategy.
Well, exactly. And I was going to say, you can go all the way back to McDonald's. You can go all the way. I look at because that was my very first real job. I look at McDonald's. I had to deal with the fry baskets. I had to make the drinks. Now, as soon as you say what you're going to get and they hit that button, the drink is starting to go. Everything is already automated. And Taco Bell is talking about making a restaurant. I saw, now maybe it's not going to happen, but I saw a conceptual photo of putting the restaurant on top, having a drive-through where there was 4 drive-through lanes and having it automated.
Wow. Yeah. So then what happens to jobs? So I think people have to become really creative over the next 25 years. And this is where I think young people are smart, because they're looking at, well, what can I do at home? Where's my niche? What can I offer? And oh, by the way, company, do you fit my
right?
The things that I want and need, not that you're the only one who gets to choose. And that's another flip with things like this. And I actually like seeing this happen. It is a disruption, but I really like seeing it because it puts people on more of an equal playing field. And, you can create your own company if you want, and then contract yourself to different places and really learn, if you're not, really learn how to create your own financial freedom.
Choose your own adventure.
Choose your own adventure. But you got to deal with the F word. You got to deal with fear. But,
and the possibility of failure.
And the possibility of failure. But there's also equally true the possibility of vibrancy and excitement. And you will fail. You will make mistakes. But get up, learn from them, go. As Michael Jordan says, I don't remember all the stats, but he has a famous quote of how many times he was given the winning shot and he failed. Yeah. And Babe Ruth saying, I struck out more times than I ever hit home runs.
Well, how many authors have queried somebody and gotten rejection after rejection, yet they're a best-selling author? I mean, you can look at it in so many different avenues, but you have to get over the fear. That's the key thing, is you have to be fearless.
There's a great book by a woman named Dr. Susan Jeffers. I've read it, but I always just remember the title, called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. You're going to have it. We're biologically wired to have fear. So, all right, I'm afraid. Every time I get on the top of the mountain, because I'm not a very good skier, it's like, oh my God. I say other words underneath.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be allowed here. And then, and then I go, and, there's probably, I might fall. Somebody might take me out at the knees, and I'm going to have fun. It's going to be all of it. And so, you feel the fear and you do it anyway and enjoy the ride.
Somebody once told me there are no memories without the risk.
I think so.
And that's the thing. There are no memories. If you don't take that risk, if you stay in a cocoon, you're never going to experience life to the fullest. Yeah. And then you look back and go, well, what if?
What if? So. I never wanted to. I used to project when I was younger. I did not want to get to that. And, it's much closer now than when I was 18, that point where I look back and had regret for not doing something that was really near and dear to my heart. And that's why I jumped and I took the risk again, even though my other company's still in business, still doing really well. It was an easy road, and I could have just gone another 5 years and then retired, and I still would have enjoyed it. I liked what I was doing, but it was like, when I'm 70, 75, 80, whenever that day comes, I know I would have kicked myself for not trying.
Yeah.
So, it was almost like I had to jump. I had to. And I'm happy otherwise.
It's important that you don't look back and go, okay, I could have done this and I didn't.
Exactly.
Did you have the fulfillment? So is there anything that we really haven't talked about that you'd like to bring up?
No. Well, if this is supposed to be about, like taking risks and finance, if you find something that really floats your boat, learn all you can. And I always tell people, learn what you can and be smart. And you have to be crazy. and jump.
Yeah.
And learn, because if you know you're going to make a mistake and fall down, get back up and figure out what didn't work and do it and begin again. That's why I tell people, begin again and move forward, and don't, that's where you have to be a little crazy. You have to believe in belief itself sometimes.
Well, as not that my audience can see, but
Believe. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Keep that on my desk.
Like Ted Lasso, believe.
Mm-hmm.
Have you watched that show?
No, but I've heard it. It's one of those things I want to check out, but I between the podcast and writing, it's not always an easy thing to do,
But that's what they have, believe above the thing. So
I've had that sign since the mid 90s, and it's like, it just keeps you motivated. So
it does. It does.
So I thank you, Susan, for
Thank
coming
you.
on.
Thank you so much.
Well, that was interesting. We talked about, as I said before, us being a step parent, and we also talked about corporate America and how everything is kind of disruptive now, how things are changing and evolving, and how you have to be more creative in your thinking for the future, because what has worked in the past may not necessarily work now. You have to realize that fear can hold you back, and you need to try to climb past that. You need to get over that. So I hope that the podcast today has given you some food for thought and made you more willing to say, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try this. I'm going to see if I can do it. And the worst thing that's going to happen is you may fail, and then you pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep on going. So on that note, I hope you enjoyed today's show. All the links are in the bio, as always, or show notes. I always say bio, but it's the show notes. And if you want to, reach out, Donna at better2podcast.com. If you want to see all the list of shows that have been on, better2podcast.com. And while you're at the site, if you look up at the top right-hand corner, there's all our links, our social media links, so you can click on one of those. There's also, you can buy me a cup of coffee, and we also have a Patreon account if you care to support the show. So I appreciate you guys. Thanks for tuning in as always, and have a great day, and I'll catch you next time. Bye. You are listening to the Better 2 podcast with DM Needom.